Welcome to Lesson 3. Did you know that the location of Rome was chosen because of this question? People often feel starstruck when they see a new bird for the first time. And this, in and of itself, is a lovely thing. The only problem is that the stars often keep people from really seeing the bird in front of them. What I've noticed is that people tend to miss the details of what they're seeing during this moment of awe. And I believe this is where much of the problem lies in a person's ability to recall the details later on. Let me be uber clear so that you don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. That initial moment of awe, that magic that happens between person and bird, is one of the most special experiences in the world. And I don't want you to brush past that or rush through it just because you want to observe a bird through a critical lens. Let yourself linger in this space for as long as the moment or the bird allows. What I am advocating for is that once your feet have landed back on the earth, that you take another look. And do so with a different set of eyes than those that you did when you were in love. The ones that will allow you to recall the details later on. Details like, how is it behaving? How long was its tail? How high up in the tree was it? How many wing bars did it have? The intention of the course is just this, to help you know what to look for and at when you see a beautiful bird. Take a moment right now and think back to one of the most interesting or amazing things you've ever seen a bird do. And to help you do that, what I'd like you to do is close your eyes for just a moment. And now, try to remember what the landscape was like. Was the bird alone or was it with others? Was there something about how the bird moved that was unique? Did it interact with other birds? Were there any sounds or smells? Was there any wind? It probably didn't take much for you to recall this moment because bird behavior is just so dang interesting. Think about the way an American bittern stands amongst the reeds, or the way an American coot moves through the water, right? Or maybe even the mating display of the yellow-breasted chat. This leads us to question number 2. What is its behavior? Now, bird behavior has enamored poets, songwriters, naturalists, and mystics throughout the ages. In fact, in Roman times, an augur, which was a person who knew how to interpret the behavior of birds, would be called in to determine, based on the behavior of the birds, if the ruler of choice was the correct one or not. Did you know that's where we get our word inauguration from, in fact? Today, we can look at the unique behaviors of birds to help us narrow our choices down when we try to identify the bird that just flitted past us. And in this discussion of bird behavior, I'll be focusing on baseline behavior, which is the most common or consistent behavior of a bird. But don't forget, there are always going to be anomalies, like dabblers who dive. Wait, what? Okay, let me explain. But first, I just want to point out that this is another one of those moments where I'm teaching you something beyond just the basic lesson, so pay attention. The duck family may not be as large as the warbler family, but it's still a fairly large family with 37 members found in North America. So birders have divided this family into 2 groups, ducks who dive and ducks who dabble. There are a few other defining characteristics for this family, so I'm going to share them here. So when you come to a body of water and you observe a duck dive under the water, it would be safe to assume it's a diver, right? Well, not always, because some divers dabble and some dabblers dive. I know, it's confusing. But because of anomalies like this, it's important to consider other behaviors that might be possible when considering what group to place a bird in. So if you see a duck dabbling, or diving for that matter, you could ask yourself a few questions. First, you could ask, well, when the duck took off from the water, did it have to run first, or did it just shoot straight up out of the water? Next, you could ask yourself, was the body of water a shallow pond, or was it a deep lake? Then you might be able to say, well, when it walked up on land or up on the rock, did it seem really off balance and kind of funky and off kilter, or was it more centrally balanced? And this is really the way it goes with all wildlife, whether bird, tree, bobcat, or slug, you're always going to encounter anomalies. Now, does that mean that it's not important to focus on baseline behavior? No, not at all. And that's because baseline is still going to be the behavior you're more likely to see more often than not. So when you're looking at baseline, there are 3 categories to consider. First is how birds interact with the world. The second is flight patterns, and the third is body movements. We've already touched on one aspect of number 1, does it dabble or dive? And we're going to skip number 2 for the sake of time because flight patterns are a bit easier to recognize. Like, does it soar? Does it hover? Does it bound? Right? So let's jump on to number 3, body movements. Within this category, there are 5 aspects to consider. The movements of the head, the wing, the rump and tail, the bill, and the feet. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the movements of the tail because just like a dog's tail, a bird's tail is quite expressive. And what's helpful about this is that by knowing the manner in which a bird moves its tail, you can get closer to identifying which species a bird is for some species. Okay, so a bird's tail can flash, flick, or pump, right? So some birds like juncos flash their tails. So that's when the tail moves open and shut, kind of like a fan, oftentimes quickly and sometimes even imperceptibly. Other birds flick their tails up and down. Think of like a song sparrow, for instance. Now, just a side note, when I say things like this, I'm not saying them because I think you already, or I expect that you already should know what a song sparrow does with its tail. Instead, I'm saying this so that you will be inspired to get out there and check it out for yourself and, discover what they're doing. Then we have birds like flycatchers who pump their tails. Now, pumping is just a slower version of flicking, but the cool thing is that within the flycatchers, the direction it pumps its tail can actually be used to positively identify 2 different species. Pretty rad. It's super helpful to know that these are behaviors to look for, not to overwhelm you with possibilities, but rather to know that when you see one of them, they might just be something worth paying attention to. In fact, these behaviors might help you distinguish one species or family from another sometime. Nice work on this lesson. Your activity is next and should take you about 9 minutes to complete.